I'd like to call the meeting to order of the New York State Board of Real Estate Appraisers. I'm assuming everybody has gotten their packets, and we'll be moving through the agenda items now. I'd like to introduce the role and have everybody tell who they are and why they're here. Why don't we start in Buffalo?
Anthony Girasol, board member.
Okay, we'll move to New York.
I'll do one person at a time. Ernita Gant, Department of State.
Ernest Delaney, Department of State.
Dave Mossberg, Department of State.
Thank you. Okay, Albany.
Carol DeSano, Board Member, Vice Chair.
Lillian Levy, Board Member.
Mark Mastrobuto, Department of State.
Amy Pensby, Department of State.
Sharon Sherlin, Department of State.
Dan Burnett, Department of State.
Jody DeLallo, Department of State.
Gallagher, board member.
Steve Farrell, Board Chair.
Rebecca Jones, Public Member.
Okay. All right. Moving forward, under department reports, Ernest, will you be giving the report on enforcement and continuing education audits, please?
We are currently auditing a sample of appraisers for their compliance with the continuing education requirement. Previously, we were doing a 100% audit, which included all the appraisers. The sample size is 10% of the appraisers who renew each month. That average works out to about 22 appraisers a month. As you know, the ASC, Appraisal Subcommittee policies, mandate that we maintain a continuing education non-compliance rate of under 10%. Since 2016, our audit is finding about 3% of appraisers fail to complete their continuing education requirement. Also, we've included in this sample appraisal appraisers who have renewed late. The ASC wants us to include that as part of this of our audit. You'll find that information on the Appraisal Foundation AQB interpretation of continuing education requirements for partial years. How that works out is that if you renew over 6 months, in addition to the required 28 hours, we'll be looking for 14 hours of additional continuing education certificates. So if you renew late, in addition to paying the late penalty, the $200 late penalty, you may be selected for our audit.
Okay. Are there any questions of Ernest from Buffalo?
No, I have no questions.
Any questions of Ernest from Albany? Okay. All right, I would vote to have Ernest's report put into record. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so passed. Thank you, Ernest, for the update. Okay, under action items, in your packet is a summary of the October 7, 2015 meeting. Are there any questions or comments on the meeting summaries? Buffalo or New York?
No questions.
Albany, questions or comments on the meeting summary? Okay, if I can have a motion to accept. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, an update on the appraisal management company legislation. David, I believe you'll be handling that from New York?
Yes. So a bill has been introduced in the Senate to move along with the AMC draft that we had all worked on. The department is currently working with the Assembly. At this point now, there's really nothing else other than we're currently working with the Assembly to try to get the bill passed as well. So if we have any other updates, we'll let you know.
Okay.
Is there a bill number?
Is there a bill number, Dave?
Yeah, S7766.
Thank you.
Do we have a sponsor in the Assembly?
I don't know, but I could certainly find out and then report back via email or at the next meeting.
The bill went in as sponsored by the governor's office, correct?
That could have been, I think so.
So would we require someone in the Assembly and the Senate to sponsor the bill?
I think it needs to be picked up in both houses as well
Okay.
before it'll get
Alright.
passed.
Okay. And I'm not putting your feet to the fire. Do we have a time frame on when we think that might happen?
I know that the current session is going to expire middle of June, so I don't know whether or not it only can be picked up this session, but I can look into it and find out more information.
All right, we'd appreciate that.
Is this something that we should be calling our congressmen to see? Is that advised or not?
Well, this would be a
Or our
state.
representatives?
I mean, this is state legislation that we would pass. And, I think that based on the board's prior discussions about it, and obviously the department moving forward with it, I think that we're, trying to go through the political process so that we meet, I think it was like 2018 that by when the Fed said that the states would have had to make that decision. So we have time. I don't think that there's any sort of pressure at this point. I think that we're certainly in the right sort of time frame. So we'll just have to keep following up with the current process.
I agree, but the only comment I would make from my own perspective is I don't want to take our foot off the gas on this thing. I don't want it sitting out for another, if possible, we'd like to get it through. I know that there's a lot involved in the process. I just don't want to back burner it. I want to kind of put our foot on the gas and leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. David, thank you for the update. Anthony, any questions from Buffalo to David on the appraisal management company legislation?
No, I have no questions.
Okay. Anyone in Albany? Questions or comments for David? Okay.
Well, the only question, is the department going to seek an assembly sponsor, or should we reach out to our assembly people?
The department is currently working on that.
Okay, so in a follow-up to that, is it frowned upon if you do reach out to our assembly or state senators on either sponsoring or at least supporting the bill?
Couldn't hear that. What were you saying?
I said, would it be frowned upon by us to reach out to our state assembly or senators on either supporting or sponsoring the bill?
I don't think that it would hurt. The board has already voted to move forward on the legislation. We had all worked together on the draft, so I don't think that would be in any way, hurtful to the process. So.
Okay. All right. Is that what you're looking for, Bob?
That's
Thank you. All right, thank you, David. Okay, if there's no questions or comments, moving on in the agenda. Under new business, we have an out-of-state licensing reciprocity question that was brought up by Mr. Jarisol and Mr. Gallagher, and I forwarded that to Jody Delola, and Jody will handle that. Jody, would you like to answer those questions?
So the comment or the question was how someone from another state can transfer their license to New York, and there was concern about maintaining licensure in their home state. They can come in through reciprocity, and we don't require that they maintain their license in another state, in the other state. They just now would be licensed and have to comply with continuing education requirements as a New York licensee. The ASC actually encourages states not to require that they maintain the licensure in the other state.
But they can if they want.
They can, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that answers the concern or, okay.
I think that was exactly the issue.
Oh,
They thought they
Well,
had
Hey, double dip, right? Wasn't that Nancy?
I was approached by two appraisers that were both licensed out of state, and they wanted to give up their license in the other state and just be licensed in New York. And when they tried to talk to somebody at the department, there was no process to do that. They were instructed that they had to keep both. And So if that's not true, then I just need to know who they can call to do that. But they were told that they had to keep both licenses, and they couldn't just give up the other one and keep the New York license.
Well, they would come in through reciprocity. They have to have a license in order to qualify to come in through reciprocity. So if they don't have a current license in that other state, then they wouldn't come in through reciprocity because they don't have a license in that state. So I don't know if they weren't currently licensed in that other state when they tried to come in through reciprocity, or do you know the particulars, or?
Both of them were licensed in other states. They're both
Okay.
general certified appraisers, and they and like I said, they wanted to give up they wanted to get in New York. They wanted to both were licensed in two states, New York and another state, and they wanted to give up the other state, but the way the law reads and the way that they were instructed when they called was that they had to keep both, and they couldn't they couldn't abandon the other one and keep New York.
That's not true. That's not true.
Anthony, were they looking? Did they establish their license in New York through reciprocity, or were they actually licensed at one time in New York?
Doesn't matter, a license.
No,
They're licensed.
Yeah,
No,
that's just a qualification method. Once you get a license in New York, now you have a New York license.
Right.
It's not like a
Reciprocity,
reciprocal
yeah.
license. It's a method of qualification, and then you have that license in New York.
Right.
So I'm confused
Just
by
like
that.
any other.
Continuing education requirements imposed by New York.
Maybe we
Right.
should find out who they spoke to in
Yeah.
the state, and then we can backtrack and correct it with whoever they spoke
Yeah,
to.
we can clarify that internally if we have an idea
know who
where it
did it,
came
right.
from, yeah.
So,
So
Joe,
who-
if Anthony
So-
was to call you directly, Anthony, just give me one moment. If he was to call you directly, we can look into it and try to clear the situation up.
Sure.
Anthony, so if you want to call Jody, and she can contact the individuals, and we can work through the process. It seems to be an isolated situation since we already have existing legislation or bylaws to take care of it.
And Anthony, I
Okay.
can reach out to you via email and give you my contact.
Great, that'd be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll make sure our phone bank staff is aware of the information too. You know, just in case wrong information got out.
It's going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
in a state.
Sometimes it's the way people present their questions too.
Interpret
So
it, right.
yeah.
And the different license laws are different, so they may have confused it with another license.
If they just said real estate as opposed to real estate
Estate
appraiser,
appraiser,
it's
right.
somewhat different with it.
All right, so Anthony, that clarifies that situation?
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. Okay.
It didn't quite make sense, so that's why I was curious why I got these two calls, pretty close together. So that's
why-
great. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's why we're here. When people have
All right.
issues or situations, we try to address them. Okay, are there any other questions of Jody or Anthony on that topic? Moving on, under new business, the FHA and inspection update from Carol DeSanto, Vice Chair, Carol DeSanto.
So the subcommittee with Chairman Rebecca Jones met October 7th after the last board meeting and went over some of the emerging issues having to do with FHA appraisals and the new requirements that were put into effect on September 15th that really had to do with observing, analyzing, and reporting the components of the house, the mechanicals of the house, and also of the appliances in the built house. And the scope of work appeared to be in conflict with our state home inspector's law. So that was the purpose of the subcommittee that was formed to look into this and to move forward. We have done a lot of research since then. In fact, we have been to training out of state, and we've met with HUD in DC. And I'm going to turn this over to Rebecca, who's the chair of the subcommittee, to also NAR became involved. The evaluation committee of NAR became involved in the very issue, because it's a national issue on it's not just New York, which at first we were just looking at the conflict with the home inspector's law. And NAR sent a letter to HUD asking for clarification, but Rebecca, you want to
Let me take over.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So with Bob and we had William Sotheby as our chair when we met in October. Basically, we said we need to go out and figure out what's going on with this and research it and see what the market reaction to everything is. So Carol and I went down to San Antonio, Texas, did an all-day training there. I had a training in Georgia, Philly, we've been to training, and the biggest reason I came here and to talk about this at the public session is it seems like it's just a cluster. Yeah. Clint Eastwood, okay? And there's miscommunication between the home ownership centers, because Philly's a separate home ownership center, Georgia's a separate part of it, and then Texas. And the National Association of Realtors and the Real Estate Evaluation Committee, which Bob, I think you chaired that at one point, didn't you? Yes. Carol and I are members of, they actually actively got involved with this and have had a lot of communication with HUD, which is great. You know, let the private sector get in there and rattle the cages and see what comes up. And 3 important points came out. The letter of NAR, the president wrote a letter in regards to appliances. Appliances is a huge issue when it comes to the new scope of work with HUD. When we were in the Georgia office, appraisers are to run the full cycles of all appliances that are conveying in the contract. So if the washer and the dryer convey, we're to run the full cycle of the washer and the dryer. If the dishwasher's built in and it's conveying, Georgia said run the full cycle. You need to be there for the full cycle of everything if it's conveying. So when we went down to San Antonio, Texas, some conflicting information there basically said if you see it's running, then you're good. Then when we brought the HUD representatives to the Washington, D.C. meetings that we just had last week, 2 weeks ago, that was another cluster. He basically said, well, if you open the dishwasher and the dishes are clean, so here we are as appraisers going, you're the source. We have part of the research, there have been appraisers that have been sued because they'll start the dishwasher, they see that it's working, and then they leave, and then there was a flood, and an appraiser was actually sued for the damage because of that dishwasher that somehow flooded and warped the floors or something was the whole. So that's a huge issue there, let alone they want us to operate spas too, but the appliance was a big part of it. The second point is, and this is to me what my issue was when I first started reading all of this, with the scope of work for an FHA assignment, it is observe, analyze, and report. Where prior it was, denote or report or observe and denote. When we look at our home inspector licensing law for New York State, Article 12B, you get into the section under what they're required to do, and it basically says observe and report. And this has been my big issue all along, as you're asking me as an appraiser to analyze where the home inspectors are reporting, am I perhaps performing a home inspection in New York State? And also in the licensing law, there are certain caveats. Appliances are one of those. Home inspectors are not required under New York State licensing law to test appliances. We are. Soil conditions, home inspectors are not to. For us with FHA, we are required to observe, analyze, and report the soil. Okay, huge issues for us. So that's the second part that this letter went into, was that specific wording. And then the third part with the NAR is revising the form that's required for any borrower with FHA. It's a form that is for your protection, get a home inspection. Okay, which has always been there, but we believe that it needs to be stronger language because there are, you know, the public out there is thinking because the appraiser's going through that they're in essence checking all these items, they don't need to get a home inspection. And I think Carol,
Personal experience.
she's got an assignment now that where the public themselves are chose not to have a home inspection because they're thinking that the appraiser who is going in and turning on the appliances is doing a home inspection. So that's my greatest fear, is that public and how the public is being harmed with this.
There are institutional lenders that actually say if the appraiser was not an inspection, you cannot rely on it. So that's not what
They used to, that brochure, they used to have to sign that they have read it and are aware of that. We thought, you're no longer going to sign off on that brochure to get a home inspection for your protection. Which, that was not put in the new legislation that went into effect on September 15th. So that's part of the issue too, is they're, you know, they're supposed to be given that brochure, but they're not signing that they received it.
This doesn't make sense.
The liability is huge back on appraisers, plus the fact that appraisers are not licensed home inspectors.
You wouldn't know if the dishwasher's working or not.
Exactly. Well, and I will tell you, I did a 6-month hiatus of not doing HUD appraisals, and then I have just recently gone back to do them. I do require the homeowner or their representative to be present at each applied inspection, and I observe them turning them on. So, but I think that one of the things that, you know, we have talked about at the subcommittee level too is there is no place for the appraisers in New York State to actually get guidance in this conflict. And we're looking to the Department of State to give maybe an opinion letter of what language or what they should be saying. I very specifically write language in each one of my reports now and say that I am not a home inspector, that I can't, that it was work, I observed it working at the time of inspection, but cannot guarantee that the life expectancy of any of the components of the house. You know, but we're looking for some sort of guidance that would protect the consumers and give guidance to the appraisers of the state of New York.
We have a responsibility, I feel, for the board to the appraisers of New York State, because you have got appraisers that aren't even turning on, I'm just using the appliances just as an example, there's many items that aren't even turning on the appliances because that's part of the instruction, just open it up and look and see if the dishes are washed. And if you took the training in Georgia, you're standing there and you're standing there for the full cycle of everything. So for New York State, I think we need to take a look at this and clarify this for our appraisers in New York State, number one, and then number two, the public, for goodness sake. There's confusion amongst the public, and I get what Lillian's saying, that problem is they're signing that at, you know, at closing past the point of where they could have got the home. Just get me in the house, you know, at that closing. So how is the public being protected through all of this is my concern.
Are there USPAP standards about that? Does it get into?
Question is there USPAP standards? The only way USPAP addresses this is within the scope of work for the intended user. So since HUD is saying this is our scope of work, those minimum housing standards, I can either choose the assignment or not. And that's kind of what my issue was before. So, I personally am not taking FHA assignments on.
Right, so let me jump in because I have a plethora of things in which I can comment. Let me start here. The beginning of you answered my question by just saying that the scope of work. First of all, this is my opinion, not necessarily as a board chair. I don't think it's the state of New York's responsibility for us to spoon feed a group of appraisers who are in this occupation, for them to be aware of the fact that this is coming through. That's the first thing. Secondly, they should see that. You're just saying to us that and we know each other very well, and you don't take any offense to this. I'm going to say this to you. You just say to us, it's New York State's responsibility to make the appraiser aware of the fact that this is going on in their own occupation. I would assume that if you're practicing in New York State or any state, when an FHA order comes in and you're looking at the scope of work, you should be aware of the fact that you're responsible to see that. And if you don't like that, then don't take it. And I don't mean that in a backhanded way, but I understand that the board should take some position. I mean, I don't think the board should be educating. Okay, I don't think the board is in the business of looking at a federal program and making the appraisers aware of the fact that it's there. They should be aware of that. Now, should we send out an email blast or should we do a newsletter item? Yeah, I'm in total favor of that.
Well, when you look at the New York State licensing law and the responsibilities of the board, I've got to pull it up real quick. That is part of it, is emerging issues that are coming down that are affecting the public and that are affecting the appraiser. So, with all due respect, when you look in the licensing law for appraisers, thank you, you got it there.
That'll be fine.
It's all within that scope of what the board should be doing.
The general vague language of the bylaws and the creed and the charge of this organization. But those are items that people are not aware of. When you're looking at a document that I know all of my major lenders, if you look at the requirements of the lender that are coming to the appraiser and the requirements of the borrower that they're signing into closing, you know what? It's there. They should be aware of it. You're talking about items that aren't aware or aren't open or aren't in public discussion. That's where you're going with that language.
Except,
okay?
But you said that, and I think you rightfully said that we should give notice to the appraisers of the coming law and the
Correct.
changes.
Right.
And I think that's what you're saying too.
Yes, that's
We
exactly
can't
right.
change the federal law. That we
No,
can't.
but understand.
But to give notice of it and maybe conduct,
That's what we're asking.
Yes.
But those appraisers who do HUD assignments are given notice of this.
No.
Well, how
And
can
the
you
scope,
say
when you
no?
look at the scope of work that comes through in an FHA order, it's right
They're
there.
not.
Well, and there's one other
Well,
issue
you
here.
know, then they should be. We can't, that's not to jump on, but you can't spoon feed them.
But you also have to understand, the way the law is written for the home inspectors in New York State, that's why it's specific to New York State. Because you could be viewed as doing an unlicensed home inspection. The way the scope of work is written in New York State for home inspectors completely conflicts with the HUD standards.
Okay, well, that being said,
And
Yeah.
that's for the licensing board of home inspectors to take up with HUD.
There is no licensing board for home inspectors.
Yes, there
It's
is.
been dissolved. This is the
And at
only
that point-
place, this is why I brought it to the public. This is the only place I can come to get this issue
Yeah.
resolved for the public.
So there's one other issue with all of this too, and because the scope of work also with HUD is that the appraisers must be provided with name of, and contact information for the underwriter, for the appraiser to talk directly with the underwriter, because the underwriter is who really signs off on everything. This is not an issue in direct work. It is an issue with AMC, which we don't have a license law passed yet, because they're not providing those yet through the AMCs. So another reason for us to move forward with the AMC license law is that there's this disconnect if there's an AMC in the middle of it, because the appraiser is not necessarily getting a direct contact. In fact, by a lot of the AMC's engagement letters, they are prohibited from direct contact with the lender. And yet HUD requires that they have direct contact with the underwriter. So we're in conflict again.
But that's for the feds to come up with.
That's the feds, but
It's
also
not
we
us.
don't have a way to regulate, because our AMC law is not in place, we can't follow through with that.
No, but we can still disseminate information. I do think that's a responsibility of this board.
I do.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with disseminating information.
That's all we're
Why-
looking for.
why-
That's all we're looking for.
Where I sometimes conflict is that once you open up Pandora's box with this, then every topic that comes forward, you've now put yourself in the way where you're going to be the soundboard. This has an existence and a presence in the appraisal industry. My concern as a chair is we begin to open ourselves up to numerous people that now want to come forward with what they feel is an appraisal topic, and it's not.
I understand that, but this is a change in law and statute, and I think we can look at it that way, as because it's a statutory change, then we can report on it
It's a
that way.
statutory change in a federal agency.
Yeah, I know,
It's not a
but
statutory
it
change
affects,
in-
but it affects
our
us,
laws.
it affects our people.
And affects the citizens of New York.
That's all we're looking for.
Can we, that being said.
Could I ask a question?
Sure you could. And we're just having a discussion. We're not having.
I have two questions. Becky, is HUD's the only one that requires this now, right? Is there any other, like VA doesn't, Fannie Mae, they don't require this, right?
What's happening is when FHA changed their scope of work on September 14th, it affects USDA. So
it's all HUD.
it is affecting USDA. What USDA, which is amazing, USDA actually was proactive in this. On October 1st of 2015, they actually require a full home inspection to be done with the USDA direct, not guaranteed, direct. Remember where the funding source is coming from. So they were proactive and said, forget we're putting this responsibility on the appraisers, bring the home inspector out. So now I just got an assignment for USDA direct. I got a copy of the home inspection piece of everything that needed to be done. So the monkey's off my back. So to answer your question, it's FHA and then USDA direct, but VA does not meet HUD, doesn't have to meet HUD minimum housing standards. It's a different scope of work.
Right, but let me piggyback on you for a second. Beck, direct versus indirect with USDA. The majority of the USDA funds are used for lending are indirect, right?
No.
Well, we had this discussion, and I called my USDA rep, and they said direct because of the limited amount of money that's being put down. The direct always calls for home inspection.
No.
That's a new law.
It's a new one. I sent you the publication.
No, I know,
that
but
came
I
out.
thought the indirect
No, they did
called
not.
for it.
No,
No.
the indirect did not call.
What prior to the October 1st, 2015 date, what USDA required was an inspector to go in, look at the chimney, look at the furnace, and I think maybe just look at the foundation. It was a limited scope of what was there. It wasn't the appliances, it wasn't the soil, it wasn't everything that needed to be done as it is with HUD.
All right, but so let's not make, let me clarify for my own information.
And they could be separate inspectors too. It doesn't even have to be a home inspector.
Okay.
Prior to October
But
1st.
direct versus indirect, I don't want to make a blanket statement. Direct versus indirect, when it comes to the USDA loans, they're only calling for inspections on direct.
Direct.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe I didn't think it was a change, because I called my USDA rep, and they said that's been in existence for like the last 5 years, right?
No, I sent you the letter.
No, I know, I did, and then I called to clarify, but.
Well,
My other question was I think it's good that Becky brings this up, because what if somebody files a complaint against an appraiser because they didn't run the appliances? It's good for the department to know that that's not an area that's covered, and it's beyond. It's an additional scope. It's a additional requirement. It's not covered, as far as I'm concerned, in USPAP or the appraisal law. So it'd be something that maybe they should look into to decide if it's an area that wouldn't be considered as far as a complaint. But I agree with Steve. I think it's a good thing for the newsletter, let people know. But I don't see how we can really get involved directly.
Well, we certainly can't change anything.
No, but
no, we can't change anything.
We're not gonna go to
No.
Washington and
No.
get 3 HUD offices to agree.
No.
It's never gonna
No.
happen.
We've been there.
No.
So just information.
Exactly. So let's protect.
It's interpretation by HUD, same as interpretation of Fannie Mae by different underwriters.
Well, and I think it's an encouragement for the consumers of New York to have a home inspection too.
Right, because
to
go back to Becky's question, let me ask you a question. Soil conditions.
Yes.
Observe, analyze, and report.
Yes.
I'm not going out with a shovel and digging a hole. I'm not a geologist. If I look at the lawn, I don't see any purple water, and the drainage seems to go away from the house, I've completed my assignment, haven't I?
With the old requirements prior to September 14th, my answer to you would be yes. Under the new requirements, my answer would be to you no. I picked a top 5 list, and that was one of them, was the soil
I
conditions.
am not qualified to detect soil.
Well,
conditions.
Exactly why I'm
So
choosing,
then
correct.
then I will condition my report on additional inspections.
You got it.
Period, end of sentence.
You got it.
It's a business decision.
Well, that's all a business decision. However, the scope of work has changed with those 3 wording, which affects how our home inspector licensing law.
Maybe
If
I'm being old and arrogant, but when are we gonna stop holding people's hands and spoon feeding them?
It's all about educating them.
I just see it different. I mean, it's one thing for them to come to you and say, you know, what do I do on this report? It's another thing for us to send out changes in laws and just what is to be aware of it. I think those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Let me defer for a second. So, who's handling, I know that the Appraisal Foundation at one point said that we had to disseminate a newsletter once a year, which I don't think we've done.
I think this is a good topic to be in the newsletter. I think that the department should look into your concerns with council's office.
Exactly.
Dave, do you agree? And look into.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you been muting us?
Turn off Netflix.
Yeah, we can certainly look into that to see how it sort of plays out with the home inspection statute.
We'll look into that and then make some kind of determination, and then maybe we can look into doing a newsletter, getting that information out there, or a letter or something like that.
If we can check with Vicky Ladenbauer.
Yeah.
And see if an email blast, because I'm assuming we have an
We
email.
don't have emails, so we couldn't do an email blast,
All right,
but
so
we can do.
That can be figured out.
Well, you know what
But
you could
maybe
do,
we
you could ask the Realtor Association, and ask the Appraisal Institute, and Columbia Society, and any, to forward the message from the Department of State.
We might get, for cost saving purposes, instead of printing
Right.
the complete license, I imagine if we got the 3 largest appraisal organizations in the state.
I don't know, do we have a place on the website to put?
We definitely would put it on a website.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you need to get the information out there that is on our website.
And I think
but-
that's what Bob says, is let's take it out there to the private sector and let them
Let them
promulgate
help
this.
us, because those groups all, in addition to
Yeah.
NAR, have all written the letters that I.
This is a hot topic. It's gonna be picked up on, and it's gonna be wildfire through social media, because, we're already being watched with the AMC bill out there. So if they see something like this coming through, it'll go through. Absolutely, so, thank you.
I had one other question before
Yes.
I let you up to see.
Talk.
So I know NAR put out a recommendation letter on this. I don't know if NISR has. Where is the insurance institute? Because my insurance carrier, I will tell you personally, told me if you decide to guarantee those appliances, you are not covered. He also, my liability insurance told me, if you crawl into that crawl space and get stuck there, and you're injured, you're not covered. Stay there. So I like to know where the insurance. I like to see where the insurance institute is again, or where the insurance institute is sitting in.
And didn't the group in Houston say if it's a matter of public safety, or your own safety, you don't do it?
Yes.
They said they
The only thing I can report back on Steve's question is when I attended the appraisal summit, which took place like 2 weeks after this came into effect, we did have a gentleman speak. I didn't bring those notes with me, who was with one of the larger companies, ILL, and he absolutely said, this is a huge issue, and what's starting to happen is the public, because there's always scams, there's always schemes, the public are picking up on this too, and then being proactive to suing the appraisers, because the appraisers are putting their errors and omissions insurance right in their appraisal report. So they're getting the information, they're getting the numbers, we're actually seeing us being targeted as a cash cow for money in the scam. You've got so it is a huge issue coming all the way through, and we'll be attending that again in the fall to see how that's manifested itself a year later. So, but thank you so much for taking this in consideration, because I really think it's gonna help the public and the appraisers, so.
Thanks for
If we
taking
do
your
a
time.
newsletter, is there any other topics that you think which should be included in there?
Well, and this kind of tails into where I was going with the next,
AMC
with
bill,
an
yeah.
agenda item I added on my own, which I'm sure Sharon's loving to hear.
Are you done with me so I can sit down?
Yeah, you can sit down. I'll.
You'll beckon me when you need beckon.
I will lash you later for your disrespect.
Now that you're kidding,
I did not disrespect you.
All right, so
Mr. Chair.
maybe David can incite a little bit of this. Do we have anybody, because I know we had some people in the pipeline, because we now have 3 vacancies. Do we have anybody in the pipeline to fill those vacancies?
I haven't heard anything specific, but I can certainly look in with our intergovernmental affairs person to see where we stand on that.
appreciate that. Because I know that.
Can I ask, I actually have the application, but my issue is I like being a regional advisor, track. Can you do both?
I don't know, we got to check.
Check
Yeah.
with council.
We'll check into that.
Okay. Is that good?
Well, that leads me, that kind of leads me back to where you were. Maybe I can buy it.
No, I heard that. What did you guys say? It's not a contract.
We're gonna look into it.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna check.
Do
Yeah.
we want to put it in a newsletter if we circulate it? They were looking for qualified individuals that want to set up real estate for it. I mean, do we want to open up that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
No,
that
it's-
would be-
All right,
Yeah,
David, if you
they're
just, yeah,
Yeah.
David, if you just, if
We're not
there's,
the recruiting firm.
You don't want
Yeah.
to start a war.
And
You don't-
each of their spaces is supposed to be appointed by a certain person.
but they don't actively go after
Of
people.
course they
Normally,
don't.
DOS brings somebody to them and they sponsor, so. All right, so David, if you can get us an update on that, if there's anybody in the pipeline, because we'd like to fill some of these vacancies.
Sure. I'll follow up today if I can.
All right, thank you.
To follow up on Amy's question, are we in new business or I guess it goes along with information from the newsletter. Maybe I get a report because again, NAR, the Appraisal Institute, and I forgot who else, have also written a letter to the appraisal subcommittee to get rid of the 4-year degree or to put it aside for a period. That it's prohibited if nobody's coming into business because financially it's impossible. You know,
Right.
to pay $85,000 in student loans on what you make as an appraiser assistant.
Right.
So they're trying to get it, put aside for a period or to, readjust it somehow, so.
Was there a response to that? I'm looking at it.
They just, like last week they got.
Oh, okay.
Can I comment?
That's
on that?
actually been out there for a while. I mean,
Yeah,
sure.
but finally now they, you go back in the old days, and here I am, the dinosaur. When the Appraisal Institute was part of NAR, then they broke off, but now every once in a while they're starting to write the same letter,
Which is good.
it's a
Yeah.
good sign.
May I comment on that?
Sure. Meeting run amok.
So what they're trying to do is they're trying to either put at a bay the qualifications or reduce the qualifications. My concern for this, because when I first saw it on surface, I'm like, okay, yes. Teaching the qualifying courses, we are canceling a lot of the qualifying courses because people, as soon as they find out what the commitment time is and the 4-year degree, they are like, oh my gosh, today in society, they just want to take the 75-hour salesperson's class and they're a business, where the appraiser, it's a bigger commitment. So on the surface, I was like, yeah, this is great. However, with what's happening with the AMCs, they're targeting to get rid of the appraisers that are out there independently and starting to hire them within. And they're trying to fast track them. And I'm concerned because of this request, that's part of that fast tracking. I'm that's just a comment, that's all.
From what I read, it
Yeah.
has nothing, the only item was the degree period.
Right.
And it's especially prohibitive, and Anthony, maybe you can speak to this too, especially prohibitive when you get into commercial. Because the time period to accumulate the points is difficult, and to try to get that many points in 5 years is very difficult. Then your education credits expire, correct? Or the education credits stay forever?
Yeah. No, I thought there was.
Depends on
It's the
which.
new assistants that have to have education with
Right.
it.
Yeah, it's
Assistants,
assistants
yeah.
that have to have some certain amount of time.
The appraiser assistants applying now have to have education completed within the 5 years prior to application.
Okay.
That doesn't apply to the
But
other.
if
To
they're
the-
already
to
in
the
one
other-
license category and upgrading, what is the requirement for that? If they're a certified residential and upgrading to certified general, because like.
That 5 years does not apply, and whatever education it took for that current credential would, if it applies to the
That
next
that
credential.
carries with, that carries with them,
that.
yeah.
So that would, so they still have to have coursework within the 5 years of upgrading a license from certified resident? Or not?
No,
No,
they
no,
got,
no.
they
They
need
can
the
use that once
qualifying points for reports.
That's a big question that comes up with certified residential moving up to certified general, because of the time that it takes to get those credits, and they're actively working as residential appraisers with those credits don't count towards the certified, so it takes a longer period of time.
Yeah,
to move up.
to get into the industry,
Yeah.
they want you to have that, as an appraiser assistant, but then once you're in the industry, they're not gonna make you go back and take those courses over.
So that's good to put in the newsletter.
That's a
Yeah.
really important point. I think clarification of those
Of that, yeah, 'cause you
qualifications
get that-
are,
you get that
and
question a
especially
lot.
for people moving into a new license category is,
Yeah.
That's good.
would be great.
That's good.
Yeah.
The other thing I forget from previous years on the board, did we as a state set the points, or did they come down from the AQB?
We have to submit and they have to be clarified, but I think originally it came from
Because we changed
DLS.
some of our points
Yeah.
recently.
Where they
The
set
time
guidelines.
to obtain them was one of the ones that we
Last
did.
year,
There's one difference, right, where you were talking about the other time, was like, it requires you to get it. Yeah, it requires you to do it over a 24-month period. with
No, I meant the point
Points,
per
yeah.
property. No, if, like a motel is 10 points and a performing arts center is 15.
High rise.
Ours, right?
Points
That's
points
ours.
and hours.
I think that's ours. I think that's the board.
We said we do
I'm
our
sure
own.
that's the board.
Yeah, we did that because we revamped some of those points because of our
Yeah, I think
municipal and rural areas in New York
Areas,
State.
okay.
It was hard to get the
Actually,
points
we were
in every
discussing last
category.
year about we shifted over some
Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
been some concern in central New York of the general certified trainees, if you want to call them something. But that it's because of the location, the difficulty in accumulating stuff. We don't have a high rise.
No, they don't have to be.
Anything above 3 stories.
It's a high rise for you guys.
It's a high rise.
Could I make a comment?
Yeah,
Sure.
I was just looking at the totals of the licensed appraisers in the state, and we're down about 5% this year. And so I don't know, could we send a letter to the AQB and say, we're down 5% and we'd like to see some kind of streamlining of the process so we don't lose appraisers? Because if we keep losing appraisers, they're going to work us out of the system. So I think we have to find a way not to dilute the licensing law, but to encourage more appraisers.
Well, I think that's where they're going with discussions about the 4-year degree and things of that nature. I think if we weren't so stingent on how the qualifications, you might have more people applying. But the way it sits now, by the time you get your 4-year degree and your outside courses and your experience credits in a 5-year period, you're not making enough money to quantify what we're asking.
I understand.
I think some of the leading organizations have now been in the position to say, look, we need to submit letters, we need to start discussing this because it needs to be changed. And we've seen this over the last 5 years. It's been 5%. We're down probably 25 to 30% across the board since the qualifications came into text. So I think, we're seeing the byproduct of what we were trying to do. And I really think we need to start looking at it. And maybe it's an idea we establish a subcommittee, once the appraisal management subcommittee is done, that we start looking to this and we come up with some solid numbers and we make a more public endorsement of reducing some of the stuff that we move forward. And Bob was sitting here when I was sitting here, and some of us shook our head and said, look, what we're going to end up with is a shrinking occupation because it's not fiscally or financially feasible to get into it. And now we're seeing the byproduct of that. And again, the standards boards, the foundation, or whatever, aren't going to tell you what you're going to do, but they're going to lead you to that, and they're going to have you submit that accordingly. So maybe it's for us to say, look, we need to start relooking at this and maybe dropping some of the qualifications because it's not working.
I agree. And if we can prod somebody, if we can send a letter or lend our support to that, I think we should.
Can somebody clarify these reports? The one dated April 18th
This year,
this year?
and the one last year, previous year,
Okay.
so you could compare year to year.
It's 15 to 16.
So what you're saying though is, last year, the third week of April, let's say 4/20, whatever, that 3 people in Oneida County applied to become certified or licensed, and this year only 1 person applied to become certified or licensed. Is that for Oneida County? Is that?
That's correct.
Am I reading that correctly? Okay. And last year there were a total of 40. That's applications in a week, or those.
But then it gives you
exam
total
takers?
renewals. Your total.
It's totals between new applications, renewals, and then total of everything.
So it's 4551 versus 4370.
It's the kind of years with
Right.
Yeah, so,
It's
okay, okay, all right.
Those are all licenses.
All right. Well, we run through new business. Are there any public comment from Albany, or I'm sorry, from New York or Buffalo?
Nothing from Buffalo.
All right, David, I'm going to beckon you one more time, I promise. Do we have an idea of where the amendment is to the mandatory licensing law?
I haven't heard any developments on that at all, so I don't think that's been picked up or anything. But since I'm looking into the board status and the other information on the AMC, I'll look into that as well about where we are on the mandatory licensing requirement.
Yeah, you got it. And Carol corrects me all the time. It's the amendment to the original licensing law. Mandatory
Amendment
licensing.
to the appraisal licensing
Appraisal
law.
licensing law. 2000 and, yeah, right, 1980, 1989. I think so.
Revised in 2000.
Revised in 2000 and, well, no, we did it a couple of times. Okay, if there aren't any other public comments at this point, I'm gonna just chime in for one quick sentence. I've said this a number of times, and people have heard me ad nauseum. And Bob can really reflect on this, along with some other members that have been here for a while. New York State, I think we've gone from, oh my God, look what they're doing, to let's see what they're doing. And I think today's is the perfect illustration of what we've done. We have a very good coexistence between the appraisal section of NYSAR, FHA, course people. I think we sit in a room and we have educated discussions, which I think helps the state in general. So, I like to thank you guys for being involved. I know it's very time consuming to get up here, and it takes a lot of part of the day, but I think we're a moving board. We don't sit. I think it's one of the reasons why we're looked at in a certain light. We bring a lot of knowledge, and we make a lot of changes based on what we bring. So I personally thank everybody for taking time in the busy schedules to come up here, or down there, depending where you are. All right. So can I have a motion for that? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So moved. Thank you, everyone.